Whom the Gods Fear, by Wdowski. Chapter 21. They were clearly not humans, though. The Brown's lipless turtle-like beak mouth was very alien to look upon. The Brown's palms revealed that his skin under his fur was pitch black and leathery. A skin tone best, Glenn thought, to perhaps take in the heat of their sun on their colder world, much like the skin of polar bears back on Earth. The green skin was more brown than black. Both their hands reminded Glenn of nimble raccoon hands, nothing like human hands. Their faces were completely bearded, with only their eyes, mouths, and nostrils showing skin. They didn't have noses, only two large black or brown fleshy nostrils that seemed to enjoy the polo's oxygen-rich atmosphere. So rich was the air for them that their air intake holes on their necks were shut so tightly they were not noticeable, until one of them would sigh, causing the air intake holes to flare open along each side of their necks. It was startling for all of the humans in the room when the first Shingnese sighed. What impressed Glenn the most about the Shingnese was how much their eyes seemed like human eyes trapped in alien animal-like bodies. 4 armed Marine guards stood behind the Shingnese. Granite and Mahan sat across them to Glenn's right. Landru and one of the polo's linguistic officers sat on Glenn's left. They were about to start the interrogation of the Shingnese when they could hear a disturbance outside the sealed conference room hatch. Rebecca Stern was attempting to join them, but 2 more of Mahan's Marines, outside the conference room, were barring her from entering. The conference room's sealed hatch barely muffled out her protests. Yet because of their large, acute bat-like ears, the Shingnese could hear her, as if she were in the same room. It was visually clear to Glenn that her voice, even muffled by the sealed hatch door, was even more irritating to them than it was to him. He decided to go outside to speak to Rebecca. He let her know very clearly he would let her into the conference room, but she could not speak unless directed by him. She also had to agree to zip it once he asked her to. Surprisingly to Glenn, she agreed to his conditions. He sternly reinforced his conditions with Ambassador Stern that if she did not follow his directions, he would have Captain Mahan's Marines remove her from the conference room within a hyper jump. Looking up at him with her doe-like eyes, she humbly agreed again to his conditions. He could only imagine how many times she must have used those eyes on her father to get what she wanted. They were much more effective than any rhetoric she has spilled out of her mouth. Rebecca quietly entered the conference room behind him. The hatch was closed and sealed. Ambassador Stern, you can take your seat beside Captain Mahan. She quietly took her seat. Shall we begin? Asked Granite. Glenn nodded in the affirmative. Granite began his questioning of the 2 Shingnese. The linguistic officer repeated everything to the Shingnese in his best Shingnese. As advanced as translation software and computers were, they were never as good as a person trained in the foreign language. Computers could never pick up all the nuances and emotional tones within all languages. To avoid as much miscommunications as possible, a human linguistic expert was still the best option. Having 2 bilingual linguistics officers that are fluent in both languages, and each being a native speaker of the respective languages, was the ideal condition for translations. Only native speakers can truly understand all the cultural aspects of a language. Computers' greatest weakness was their ability to make correct errors. Much like a spell-checking program may replace a misspelled word with correctly spelled but the wrong word. For example, there, or here and here. In translating 2 very different alien languages, these types of mistakes were compounded. It is even more difficult when people use sarcasm or slang, saying bad when they actually mean excellent. The pitfalls and miscommunications are endless when left to only computers. Your name and rank were Granite's first question to the Brown. The linguistic officer easily translated into Shingnese. The Brown said nothing. "Rijo ASEU?" questioned Glenn to the Brown, knowing that he was the commander. The Green spoke up. He does not answer human directly. He is Brown. You talk or these good. You speak English. Glenn turned to the Green. Speak human, yes. Speak human, I good. Rijo ASEU? Glenn asked the Green. Jacques. The Green thumbed his chest. Ship Scout Group 6-1, Human Language Special 1. I was to question capture humans. Who is the Brown? Granite asked the Green. Ship Scout Group 6-1 leader. He named leader Shizuas. Granite turned his attention back to the Brown. So, Shizuas, you don't like to talk to humans? The Green this time translated for Granite. The Shingnese brown spoke to the green. Rieth yor lichuese. What did he say? Granite asked the green. He asked how, and when we will execute them. Glenn replied. Damn, you can really understand them. I didn't know your Shingnese was that good, responded Granite. It's not, it is survival level at best, responded Glenn. He turned to the brown, Re-tho lich. Both Shingnese seemed confused. Did I say it wrong? Glenn turned to the linguistic officer. No, Mr. Yeager, I think your pronunciation is actually better than mine. The linguistic officer replied. Understand, you know, kill us. No, understand why, the green interrupted. We don't kill prisoners of war, replied Granite. To do so would be a war crime. War crime, no, understand, answered the green. The linguistic officer was not sure how to explain it in Shingnese. He turned puzzled to Commander Granite. We have rules for war. Breaking those rules is a crime. Granite answered. The linguistic officer was able to translate that into Shingnese. War no rules. Kill enemy or die, replied the green. Then why are you and your leader still alive? Why didn't you attempt suicide like the others? Asked Glenn, although sure that he already knew the answer as soon as he asked it. Whites no, the green replied. Whites warrior class. Humans no kill captured enemy. No, we don't. Humans are not perfect. Some humans have in the past, but they were punished by our people. Granite replied. Even human war criminal win war? They punished, asked the green. Usually not. Usually it was only the losers war criminals that were punished. Rarely are the winners war criminals punished. Some winners have punished their own war criminals. For this Glenn needed the linguistic officer to translate for him. Of the few words Glenn knew, his pronunciation may have been good, but his Shingnese vocabulary was limited. He was not fluent in the language. The green then repeated what the linguistic officer said, but in better and clearer Shingnese for his brown task force commander to best understand. The brown seemed puzzled, that is, if the Shingnese facial expressions could be read the same as a human's. He may have seemed puzzled, but also seemed intrigued. Rijaz adds rast xne, the brown asked. What be war crime? The green translated. What acts would be considered war crimes? The linguistics officer better translated into English. Killing prisoners, physical torture of prisoners, intentional murder of noncombatants, denying prisoners of war medical attention, food or water, forced labor of prisoners of war. The use of chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons. The linguistic officer translated each crime Commander Granite told them. The green again retranslated into better Shingnese for his commander. And rape. The linguistic officer had to stop. I am sorry, Commander, I do not know the Shingnese word for rape. He turned to the green. Do you understand rape? No. Sorry, not know this mean, replied the green. Is forcing sex upon an unwilling partner. Glenn explained in English. The linguistic officer translated verbatim in Shingnese. Understand. We know such crime. You do not punish those that rape. Granite asked bewildered. No, this crime. No rape among us. The green tried to explain to Granite. Why force sex on unwilling? No love. Glenn turned to Granite, who seemed confused. It seems the Shingnese have not had a case of one Shingnese forcing sex on another without their consent. They have no history of one raping another. The linguistic officer translated what Glenn explained to Granite. Yes. This. No, we this crime. The green confirmed. It seems they are a superior race to us after all. Rebecca's stern nasal voice pointed out. Glenn was amazed she was able to hold her tongue as long as she did. The two Shingnese though covered their bat-like ears and moaned in pain. You ray though those those, the brown protested. You said you don't torture, translated the linguistics officer. Rebecca was shocked. How dare you? The Shingnese moaned louder. Choo cheer. Choo cheer. Glenn understood. Please. Please. He knew enough Shingnese that this was more like a groveling begging please, not just a polite please. He turned to Rebecca. I think you need to go now. He glanced at one of the Marines who led Ambassador Stern out of the room. Unfortunately for the Shingnese, and even for the humans in the room, she did not go quietly. The Shingnese begged for mercy. The brown offered to tell them everything he knew. Just stop the torture. Not until the conference room hatch was closed and she was removed from the same deck the Shingnese were finally able to remove their hands from their ears. The intake slots on their necks opened and closed widely several times as the torment of Rebecca Stern subsided for them. "How you stand such pain?" the Green asked Glenn. "At times I am not so sure myself." For the next 3 hours the Brown, with the Green assisting in the translations, answered all their questions. He confirmed what they already knew, that the Shingnese did not have Demi, and that they had salvaged the damaged hyper-engines and D-mass generator from the Venture. It was clear to them, though, that the Scout Task Force leader was not high enough in the chain of command to be privy of the fact that the attack on the Venture was not authorized. He believed his government's propaganda that the Venture had purposely attempted to ram the Shingnese fighter, and that the Shingnese pilot was forced to open fire and destroy the Venture. How could a much slower vessel, as the Venture, ram a much faster Shingnese fighter? Glenn questioned the Brown. The Shingnese leader could not answer. It was a hole in the Tri-Council's propaganda he had not considered before. Glenn's point did force him to question the Shingnese government's version of the event. Glenn, without flowery diplomatic speak, used direct reasoning why the Earth had no interest in a war with the Shingnese. Glenn even illustrated his point by plainly pointing out the fact that even with their own direct contact with the Shingnese, it was they who opened fire first. The Polo had merely been attempting to communicate with them. They did not fire first upon the Shingnese ships, which they could have. The Shingnese task leader had to admit that Glenn spoke the unvarnished truth, especially since it was he who granted his ship captains the permission to open fire. The Shingnese Brown task leader lowered his eyes in what seemed to be an expression of shame. He seemed no longer able to look Glenn straight in the eyes any more with the pride he had just been displaying, even as a prisoner. Glenn hammered the point that even though the Shingnese ships had opened fire on them first, the Polos still came to their aid. All of his severely wounded crew members were attended to by the Polo's medic team. The Shingnese officer had to admit that if the tables had been turned, the whites would have slain all human survivors. The enemy was the enemy, healthy or wounded, he was to be destroyed. It was a credo their white military class lived and died by. Glenn's next decision shocked both the Shingnese, and he even shocked Granite and Mahan. Glenn was sure it would infuriate Rubel once he found out. Glenn used his four-armcom to reach Wdowski on the crippled Shingnese scout ship. "Wdowski, do the Shingnese have any workable shuttlecraft?" "Aye, Mr. Yeager. They have a complement of 4 shuttlecraft. All seem to have been undamaged by our strike." Wdowski replied over Glenn's four-armcom. "Good, I want you to launch 2, and dock them alongside the Polo." "Aye, Mr. Yeager." Wdowski signed off. Glenn turned to the Brown. "Look me in the eyes." The Shingnese Green translated, and the Brown looked into Glenn's eyes. "I am going to allow you to take your 2 shuttles and your wounded crew members. Catch up to your other 2 vessels before they reach Shing 7. "Mr. Yeager, do you think that is a wise decision?" questioned Captain Mahan. "Yes, I do," Glenn replied. He turned back to his captive, looking the Brown Shingnese again straight into his very human-like eyes. "You and your crew members are free to go. Tell your people we do not wish a war with them. We know that the Venture's destruction was the actions of one lone fighter pilot without the authorization of the Tri-Council. You saw how the Polo held up against your 3 warships. The Earth has an entire fleet heading to your system, with greater ships than ours. A full-out war with humans will not go well for your people. Let us end this war before it accelerates any further." "Asif," the Brown answered, lowering his eyes again. "Good. Hoof, hoof." Glenn turned to Captain Mahan. "Please have your men escort them to their shuttles as soon as they dock alongside." Mahan stood. "Aye, Mr. Yeager." Mahan and his Marines escorted the Shingnese out of the conference room. With the Shingnese gone, Granite turned to Glenn. "I understand why you are doing what you are doing, but don't you think you're taking a big gamble?" "I know I am. Yet, our fleet does not have our repelling shield technology. If they jump into a firefight with the Shingnese will not be the only ones getting bloodied. I hope our Brown commander will contact his people and relay what happened to them against just one of our ships. Not even one of our large dreadnoughts. I think we made our intentions clear. We want a peaceful resolution to this problem between us. I think we also made it clear we can bloody their noses. That is if they had noses." "Agreed," Granite replied. "That is exactly what the Shingnese commander said." "Commander," answered Glenn.